And we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good morning, Mary. I am doing amazing. I am just, I'm ready to bring it today.
I love it.
There's some days, sometimes we have struggles. Sometimes we're not on our A game. And actually, it's one of those days. But you know what? Coming on and sharing stories and trying to uplift other people is going to help brighten my day and bring this week to a close here this Friday morning.
I love it. I love it. That's what we do, right? We push through because
Yeah.
you love the community and you want to be there for the community. And today we have a very interesting topic. So we've been getting a
Yeah.
lot of questions about um, sometimes people have different faiths, sometimes they have
Yeah.
different traditions, and they can be in the same family. And sometimes that
Yeah.
causes conflict. And I know that you've
It
been doing
does.
this a very long time. I know you're only 23 and the business has been around for 20, but
Mary.
you have lots and lots of stories. And I thought this would be very interesting. So we got so many questions about this. So we're just going to jump right into it because the topic of today's
Sure.
show is how to honor both faith and family,
Yeah.
especially when combining traditions to make an honorable celebration of life for your family member. So I'm going to
Yes.
just get into these questions and you can share some stories. And again, just a
Sure.
little bit of housekeeping. If people have, and again, if you this is the first time you've been on the show, this is Chris Miller, funeral owner and director of Thomas Miller Mortuary and Crematory. That's been around since the 1800s, and you just look fabulous for your age.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you very much. 1891, but we're the fourth family that's operated. So we've only been around since the late 60s, early 70s.
that's right. That's right.
So we've
I
still
think
been
it's
around for
funny.
over 50 years. So,
It's true. It's true. That's a long time. All right, so let's get into it. So these are some of the questions that came in. I'm gonna prep a few, and then we're gonna ask them one by one, just so people can kind of be on there. In fact, we actually do have a live caller. Good morning,
nice.
Kathy. Thank you so much for
Good
joining us.
morning.
We love
Good
Kathy. She is
morning.
actually the funeral director over at the La Sierra Chapel, which is also a Thomas
Yeah,
Miller mortuary property, which is awesome. So that brings me to remember, if anyone has any questions live on the show, please put them in the comments because we love answering questions
yeah.
live. Try to stump Chris. That would be a fun thing to do.
Oh, stump the director.
Stump
There
the
we go. That's
director. I love it. All right. So here we go. All right.
all right.
The first couple questions. One is when faiths and families differ. So the question is, what are some of the most common scenarios where family members' religious or cultural beliefs around death diverge, and how have you navigated those sensitively in planning a
Sure.
ceremony? So
Sure.
when people have different ways of thinking or beliefs, how do you um, navigate that through to make a very consistent? And I'll go off screen so you can answer.
Sure. So let me first take a step back and say, you know what? When we first started, funeralizing here in our family back in the 60s and 70s, things were a lot more traditional, where families were just grew up in their own faith, be it Christian, Catholic, Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, Seventh-day Adventist, Mormonism. So everybody kind of stuck to their own channel of their own religious faith, and their families all were together. But as we've evolved over the last 30, 40 years, we've become a melting pot and more multicultural and multi-faith within the people and families that we serve. So definitely over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen more, you could say, hybrid funerals. And the hybrid funerals are where we're trying to bring the respect of the loved one that has passed away with their faith, and still helping honor the family with the faith that they currently have, because they've kind of blended their faiths together. And so when we sit down with our families, we always want to know and honor their loved one that has passed, and what was their faith, and if they were Christian or Jewish or Seventh-day Adventist or one of the other faiths, we always want to kind of memorialize their loved one. So it's not necessarily about those that are living, but it's about the one that is passed and honoring their faith. So we always want to kind of tailor our services and our structure around them, and then still honoring the family. And we're really trying to honor the brothers and sisters of that loved one because they're still part of that faith and religion also.
Right. I love that. That actually kind of ties into the next question, which
Yeah.
was about blending traditions respectfully. Can you
Yeah.
describe an example of a hybrid ceremony that you mentioned where two traditions were blended and what intentional choices were made that made the service feel cohesive and honoring both sides?
Sure. So we've had some really unorthodox, you can say, unorthodox blendings where we've had like a Jewish family. So part of the family was Jewish, but then part of them were Hindu, like Buddhists. And so what we did is we allowed part of their families to have some of their prayers in their faith of being in Hebrew, in being Jewish. And we did that for a little bit. And then, in honor of the rest of the family, they had brought in their monk and they were able to do their chants and prayers in Hindu. So we did a little bit of both. And we ended up, a lot of people with certain faiths and religions, certain of them are very structured when it comes to burial or cremation. And so we ended up doing a cremation, even though the person, grew up in the Jewish faith, and Jewish faiths don't really uh, believe. It's not that they don't believe in cremation, but it's not predominantly cremation; it's predominantly burial. But the family was more in tune of accepting cremation because they're wanting that flexibility of honoring their loved one and visiting their loved one, and everybody in that family wanted a little memento or a memory of that person, so they elected to do cremation. So we honor them with having some prayers in Hebrew under the Jewish faith, but then honoring some under the Hindu faith, and then doing cremation afterwards. So then everybody was in line, and it's a sensitive situation. But what we do is we always try to bring the families together when they come into our operation. They'll sit down around our arrangement table, and we want them to talk about it because it's important to talk about everybody's faith and kind of honoring everybody's and creating these special services that are hybrid. I think are actually very unique and very special to families because it kind of honors their traditions from generations ago and bringing them in here into today.
I love that. That is wonderful. And you mentioned that everybody wanted a little memento. So you're talking about when they're cremated, they have the options of getting a little urn or a little
Yeah.
piece of jewelry or a keepsake with their thumbprint, right? Is that what you're talking
That is
about?
correct. That is correct. So
That's awesome.
sometimes, and that's where cremation has become a little bit more popular in appeasing everybody because when everybody has their own little portion of their loved one, some of them want to have a burial of their ashes and they can bury their loved one's ashes and have that memory and going to a cemetery or a place. Some of them want to do a scattering where they can scatter them on their property or in the ocean or up in the forest somewhere. And then some of them just want to hold on to them and keep them close to them. So it gives the
Love that.
flexibility of every family kind of feeling good about a decision that they've made and they all were able to contribute. And then they were all able to have their closure of their loved one that they've lost.
I love that. We actually
Yeah,
had just got a comment because it is all about the living. You're so right. I love that. Thank you, Steve Reno.
it
Yeah,
is.
because I think everyone needs, and that's why in previous shows we've talked about this, that you really encourage people to have a celebration of life in some way. They can choose
Yes.
which way they want to do it, but to have some kind of way of closure. Like I have an aunt who it was during COVID and she passed and it just wasn't the time or energy wasn't available. And so
Yes.
her children decided not to. And even though I know she's gone, because we didn't have a funeral, I just feel like, oh, should I call her? Oh, wait, no, she's in heaven.
That's right.
Like, yeah, so I
That's
think
right.
it's it no matter what you do, having something as a way that the family can honor whichever tradition, whichever faith
Yes.
your own way, pay tribute to them because a funeral is about the living, as Steve said.
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
that. Which this totally ties into our next question. This is going beautifully, Chris. You're answering
Sure.
all these questions lovely. Um,
Wonderful.
a third question that came in is about getting everyone on the same page. So,
Yeah.
in your experience, and you do a lot of training, you keep up in your profession. I love that.
Yes.
Um, the question is, what communication strategies do you recommend when families need to discuss funeral wishes that mix faith-based and secular elements, especially when emotions and loyalties run high? So again, this is all about what communication strategies do you suggest?
Sure. So there's a lot of ways that we can communicate from a staffing point. A staffing point is giving people those options and saying that there's nothing wrong with doing a hybrid type of service. It's just trying to honor it and making sure that we can accommodate everybody without overlapping and hurting anybody's feelings. And so I know a lot of the times when we do these multi-faith type of services, we might have a 2-day service. It might be an evening visitation where we'll have one of the pastors or one of the priests come in and do a prayer service in the evening, and then the next day we'll go to the church and then we'll have it there. But also when it comes to honoring certain things of like having video tributes and having certain customs during those traditional things. Like sometimes we went to a church yesterday for a service and they didn't have the equipment set up. They don't have the technology to run our video tributes, and the family really wanted a video tribute, so we were able to accommodate. We brought in our own system and set it up on a screen, so then they were able to project their video at the church. And again, we always need to try to get permission because some churches are still very liturgical and they want to just run by the rules of how the church is operating, and they don't like those types of outdoor type of video celebrations, things like that. And that's why when we talk to families, we always need to find out, will the church allow us to do certain things? And if not, maybe that's why they should have a funeral at the funeral home or at a neutral site. So then we're not impeding on anybody's rights, because I know we've had services at a Christian church and then we had a different faith come in, and then they took the pulpit and then they kind of overran the whole service, and it wasn't their place and time that they should have done that. So it's really getting the churches on board with the families and having an open line of communication, so then those types of things can be done in the right area at the right time. And so it flows, and it does. It's worked out beautifully in the past. We've had a couple ruffles in the past too, where we've had a couple glitches where different faiths will kind of collide a little bit. But most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, it's usually pretty seamless. The best way to do those multi-faith type of ceremonies is at a neutral site, typically the funeral home, or just doing it at the graveside, or even if you're doing it at your own home or something, and allowing people to come where it's a neutral site. So then not one faith takes over then on the other.
That's really good advice. I think that, and I've seen that happen many times. And then the
Yes.
family gets really uncomfortable, like, what the heck is he doing up there? Like, that's not how we
Yep.
planned it. And then they get all stressed out, and we don't need the family being more stressed out in a
That's
very
correct.
stressful situation. You
Yeah.
want that memory of it to be a beautiful thing. And you do have a
Yeah.
beautiful facility there at Thomas Miller. You have a
Yeah.
gorgeous chapel and an area for reception. And
Yeah.
I think you guys make it so nice, and you can bring in catering. And
Yes.
if a catering has in fact, this was a question that came up in one of our, if you go to Thomas Miller Mortuary's website, there's actually a little button that you can ask any question you want, and the answers
Yep.
will come to you. And it's called Compassion Concierge, and it will
Yeah.
actually answer. And somebody asked, can we have alcohol at the
Yes.
chapel? And the answer came back from you that as long as the caterer has a license,
That is correct.
that your staff won't serve, but you, of course, not allowed to legally, so the
That
caterer
is
can do
correct.
so. But that's
That is
nice
correct.
to know.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
because that's an issue, right? We have
It
I was
is.
I was raised Catholic, and you're supposed to have an old-fashioned wake.
That's
So
right.
exactly. And you kind of answered this next question, a little bit, but let me
Okay.
make sure that we've clarified it. So the
You
fourth
bet.
question was about role clarity and ceremonial flow, which again you touched on this. The
We did.
question was, in a blended service, how do you determine who leads which part, such as a clergy member, a celebrant, or a family member, and how does that
Yes.
impact the pacing and tone of the service? So I think you kind of answered that one.
Sure. We do. And so what we try to do is that day or two before the service, when once we've chosen a time and day and the location for the ceremony, and we kind of have put our pieces in place, we have we have an outline, we have an agenda, and we kind of say, hey, you got 10 minutes, you got 5 minutes, you've got, or it's an open mic where people are sharing stories and stuff, where they want the community to be more involved and they want less. We've had it where we don't even have a pastor or a priest or a monk or any clergy. They just want it very casual, and it's not in religious tones. And so we've done that also, where we have that type of structure, but the structure is important. But the public, the people that are the attendees of the funeral, may not know the structure. So we may not have a guideline like in the program, where you open up a program and you go, oh, there's the introduction, and then there's the opening prayer, and then there's the eulogy and the closing prayer. We don't typically put that in a program unless a family requests that, because it gives us a little bit more flexibility when it comes to timing and if we have to like interject somewhere. But we have an internal agenda that the clergy has, the family has, and my staff has. So wherever we're at, we kind of follow our own agenda of knowing when to insert certain videos or insert certain music or insert a certain person to talk. So so it flows very well. So there's kind of, you could say, a little dress rehearsal, maybe 10 or 15 minutes before the service. What we do is we'll sit down with the clergy and a couple of the key family members, and we'll just kind of talk it through behind the scenes. So then when we're doing the service, it flows smoothly. So it's kind of like a wedding rehearsal the night before the wedding. Well, we do a funeral rehearsal, but it's only like 10 or 15 minutes before the funeral.
That's awesome, and then everyone feels confident that it's gonna run the way they had talked about it in the meeting.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's helpful because I think
Yeah.
like you said, it's a stressful situation. I mean, it is a celebration, but
Yeah.
everyone wants to make sure no one's stepping on any toes or that they've honored the person in the right way, and so I think you just
Yes.
by having Thomas Miller Mortray's, like, team, family, as we call them, um,
Yep.
having them walk people through it and have them feel that comfort, I think that's what sets you guys apart, which is great. It's not
Absolutely.
just a machine, it's
Yep.
truly a family taking care of you, which is great.
That's right.
All right. Well, this brings us to the next question.
You bet.
It is regarding guiding clients through sensitive talks, and again, you've touched on this a little
Sure.
bit. But if you had anything else to say, just let me know. But it said when families guiding families through the delicate conversations, what tips do you give to other funeral directors or celebrants to ensure that the process stays inclusive, meaningful, and conflict averse? So basically,
Sure.
how you take care of problems before they happen.
Yeah, I would say you never know, because there could be a loose cannon out there. So, like I said, we always do a little rehearsal. We kind of know what the game plan is. When it comes to the pastors are usually always in their lane. If it's a pastor, clergy, a priest, a monk, they're always going to keep it liturgical. They usually have their scripts that they read, and they don't go off script. It's typically when we open it up, when it could be kind of, you could say there's a rogue family member or a rogue pastor that come in from the outside, because there could be a pastor that is in attendance at the service as a guest, and when you have an open mic and they come up to do sharing, and they can go on, and sometimes they can hijack the service, you could say, and they might end up talking for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and it was only supposed to be like a 2 or 3 minute sharing. And then they could go off track, where you never know if they're going to say any bad things about that person, or that not nice things. Where that's happened in the past too, where you always are talking about the great and wonderful things of a person's life, but we've had people get up there and talk some real bad things around people too, and you're like, oh my goodness. It's like, and I remember one time it was like a guest was talking a story, and the story was going down the rabbit hole the wrong way. And the clergy was sitting in his chair kind of behind the person, because they were standing at the podium. And the clergy had to kind of stand up and kind of grab the person by the shoulder and say, oh, thank you very much. And it's like, we have to move on to our next speaker, because they had gone on and it wasn't going very well. But at least the pastor was cognizant enough to know, oh, this is not going well. We better move on. And he graciously moved it forward, and it was nice way he shut it down, and then invited the next person up. So uh, you never know. Like I said, open mics can you kind of lose control that way, and you don't know what you're getting into. So that's why sometimes it's sometimes better to have designated speakers, knowing who you're going to get to speak instead of having just an open mic at a service. Also,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been to funerals like that as well. Um, I was actually at a funeral a few years ago, and there were twin sisters. One of the sisters
Uh-huh.
died, and the other sister, let's just say she had a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
It was a backyard. There was no funeral attendance there. It was a
Sure.
completely family only.
Yeah.
And when she got up there, she let loose. And at the at the
Oh
end of
boy.
her talk, she literally took the mic and slammed it on the ground. Like, not a
Oh
mic
boy.
drop, but a slam. And I was the
Mike
one,
Sloan.
like, because I had grown up with these girls, I literally, like, and everybody was like big eyes, like, "Oh my god, how to handle this," right? But I grew up with this girl, so I like, yeah, so I like ran over and I grabbed the mic and I said, "Wow, Michelle, that was so powerful. Your feelings, your emotions are so raw because you loved your sister so much, right?" And everybody's like, "Yeah." And then she said,
Yeah.
and so because Michelle, I shouldn't have said her name, but anyways,
Oh,
um, I was like, because growing up, you did this and you this, and you know that your sister loved you so much, and she was like, yeah, like it totally diffused. I was like so proud of myself, and I had that
yeah.
glimmer of moment. So I was like, oh my gosh, it could have gone
Yeah.
so bad.
It could
Yeah,
sometimes, yeah. That's why open mics are not really a good thing at a funeral ceremony. Now, if you want to do a reception afterwards and you have an open mic at a reception where people are, like you said, having a couple drinks, having a good time, and then just talking, that's a better place for an open mic.
yes,
But really, 2 to 3 guest speakers, somebody from childhood, somebody from college or midlife, somebody later in years, or a coworker. You always have 2 or 3 speakers, and they all talk about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes each. Perfect.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, so it's kind of
Yep.
a like it's set, so he knows it's going to happen, and then it won't go off the
Exactly. And
rails.
somebody who knows yeah. And you just don't open up and say, hey, anybody want to use the mic? And you take the microphone, you go, yeah, yeah, I want to talk all about it. And then it just goes down a rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
yeah,
Not a good thing.
yeah. And also, I've been to a funeral where they did that, and nobody got up. So it was like,
Well, that's true.
anyone,
Oh,
Bueller,
geez.
Bueller.
Well, let me tell you. I'll tell you a story. One time we were at a Catholic church,
Okay, I'm going to go off
and
screen
so
so you can tell the story.
so we were at a Catholic church, and the priest was doing his liturgical Catholic service, and it came. He had just finished his homily, but this priest allowed any of the guests to come up and say a few words. And so he said, "At this time, if anybody would like to come up," and he's looking around, he's looking, and nobody came up. And then he laid into the group. I can't believe you guys attend this service and you not one person has anything nice to say about this loved one. And he gave them the riot act. Oh, he was like yelling and scolding the people. And there was probably 80 or 90 people. So it wasn't just a small group. This is a pretty good sized service at the Catholic Church. And then after that, nobody still got up because they were all scolded and nobody wanted to like be up there. So he goes, this is terrible. And he kind of like slammed the mic down, and then he just went on with the rest, and then he started doing the blessings of the Eucharistic and all that kind of stuff. But boy, it caught everybody off guard because he must have been having a rough day, that the priest, and he just laid into everybody about not saying nobody came forward. It's like, what do you mean no one can come forward? There's got to be somebody out there that has a beautiful story to share, and nobody. It was crickets. It was it was something else. Those are
I'm
those are stories you always remember.
I'm I'm laughing in embarrassment for them because yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, then you feel so, and feel terrible for the family too. So, yeah, so word of the wise, Chris suggests open mic, good for the reception, maybe not for the service.
Not for
So,
the service. And if you have a service, definitely have 1 or 2 people say a eulogy, or have, so they
yes,
know, so they're not caught off guard either. So then they can maybe have a few things written down, because it's hard to talk in front of people sometimes. A lot of people are especially emotional in that time. So definitely be prepared, write a few things down. You don't have to go on forever, just say a few nice, kind words, but it's always nice to say a few things.
Yeah, exactly. Steve actually mentioned, I just put that up, that public speaking is very intimidating. And so some people are like, I don't want to do it. But I think
Yeah,
it's true. Like if you can prepare, like maybe on little 3x5 cards, just
that's
like a
right.
couple bullets, but also short and sweet, right? Because
Absolutely.
I've also been to funerals where I think we've talked about this before. I've been to 80 in the last 10 years plus now.
Yep.
But just because, to support the family.
Yeah.
But there's some people who take that mic and they make it their own and they're up there
Yeah.
for 30 minutes and you're like, everybody's like, get the hook.
Yeah,
Even though they're
really.
saying lovely things, sometimes it goes on a little long. So short
Yeah,
and sweet is appropriate. That's for sure. Okay.
absolutely.
Well, let's wrap this up with our final question. We're doing so good on time, Chris.
Yeah,
Goodness sakes, it's been such a great topic. Thank you for sharing all
you
your
bet.
insights. The last one is regarding celebrating uniqueness while honoring roots. So, how might personalized readings, music, or symbolic acts be curated in a way that honors the deceased's faith background while embracing the family's broader cultural or secular identity? So, again, it's all about how you might personalize readings, music, or different symbolic acts that would help blend the two together.
Sure. So, we always encourage pre-planning and preparing for your service. It's inevitable that none of us are going to get out of this world alive. And so I'm a big proponent of people putting their wishes down on paper. And so when people have that opportunity to pre-plan and prepare and put all their wishes down for their family, it makes it so much easier for their loved ones. So when a husband or a wife or an individual are making their funeral arrangements, we go through a lot of details like what are some favorite scriptures, what are some favorite poems, what are some favorite songs or music, or what era of music did you like, the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s type of music. And so we write those types of things down in their little funeral bio. So then we have all these little notes. And so sometimes, again, families don't communicate this type of stuff with other family members. So when a family member comes in and the children come in and review mom's funeral wishes, we say, hey, your mom put down she loved the 23rd Psalm and she loved Amazing Grace and she has some beautiful songs here in scripture. They're like, oh gosh, I'm so glad mom put those things down. It's going to make it so much easier because we can incorporate those things into her service. So that is a key thing is when you're planning, plan ahead, write those things down. It helps relieve the burden off your family. It also personalizes the service to tribute and pay tribute to that person that has passed by saying, hey, this was their favorite song. This was their favorite scripture. This was their favorite color of flowers on the casket. So we can tie that in. Sometimes families, and we've talked about this in the past, I think, like somebody was a big sports fan or and so people would want to wear their favorite sports team or their favorite jersey. Or sometimes people say, "Oh, go Hawaiian or tropical," and everybody should wear Hawaiian stuff. So we can put those in the pre-plans, and then it helps the families. It helps guide the families honor the traditions and the customs of their family members. So pre-planning is such a great thing. It's a gift and a blessing that you can give to any family member. So I recommend that you take the time to write those things down. And there's our staff can help you. We have pre-planning counselors that can come out and help you and put all those wishes down. It relieves the burden so then you can go live life. And then when that time occurs in your life, when you've passed, you've really been a real blessing to your family by leaving the gift of those memories and sharing all those items with them. So then we can go ahead and memorialize you at the time of your passing.
I love that. It
Yeah.
it really it really does help, and, and just as a quick side note, my mom, we knew she was passing. She had cancer. She only
Hmm.
had a few months, and I remember I was driving to a client meeting, and she called, and I was going to see her every day anyways, right? And so,
Yeah.
I but out of the blue, she said, "Okay, I think it's time to plan my funeral." And I was like, I'm like literally driving on the 91 to I
uh,
had a meeting in Irvine, and I was like, "Oh." okay. And she's like, well, I've got all the arrangements done at the funeral home. He said, but I just thought we'd plan my ceremony. Like, I just thought I had a few ideas, and I used to do a lot of events for corporations. So she's like, so
Yeah.
I thought maybe you could help me with that. And I'm talking to her, I'm kind of stunned, even though I knew we had to do it. I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
why. So I literally missed my off ramp. I missed the 241. So I was just driving to her, like, okay, let's go, let's do it. So I'm driving to her to Anaheim, and all of a sudden I go, oh, Mom, I have an appointment. Like, I have a client meeting. There's people meeting me. And she was like, I am so sorry. I didn't mean this moment. Like, it at your convenience, even though she was actively dying. I was like,
Yeah.
at my convenience. I said, um, okay, so I'm gonna get off the freeway, turn around, go back, and then I'll come to you. It'll be a couple hours. Is that okay? And she's like, Of course, we have plenty of time. I'm like, do we though? Like, really?
Yeah.
And it was literally a month before she passed, and we were able, her favorite song, my mom was Catholic, and she wanted Wind Beneath My Wings, she wanted Ave Maria, like, she had everything, the flowers she wanted, a old-fashioned wake, and it
Yeah.
was nice because once we got all that down on paper, like you said,
Yeah.
it was like, "Okay, mom, don't you worry. We
It's
got it
all
all
right.
taken care of."
We got it
She's like, "And
covered.
I want you to invite all the pointy hats," which is the bishops.
Yeah.
She had 9 pointy hats at her funeral, Chris, 9.
Wow. Woo.
I know.
Wow.
She's pretty cool.
Nice.
Anyways, so to wrap this up, thank you, Chris, for answering
You
these
bet.
questions. I think
Yeah.
it's going to help a lot of people out there. And in fact, just to summarize, if this is something your family is going through, maybe not this moment, but maybe sometime in the
Yeah.
future, please share this with you. And we always take the show and break it into little bite-sized pieces. So we'll be
Yeah.
sharing those as well. So if you find something that you think, oh gosh, this is going to help my cousin Bob, who's dealing with this with his mom, who maybe they have different faiths or different you know,
Yeah.
areas of interest, it might just help put a little period at the end of their planning. And I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's okay to honor everybody's faith and respect, because uh, everybody has that opportunity and has the wants to share where their past has been and where they can go into the future. And by blending it and accommodating all the family's needs, everybody needs the opportunity for grief and closure. And by honoring everybody's wishes, it makes the grieving process of moving on a lot easier.
I love that. Yep. So true. Well, anyways, I just want to again, thank you everybody for coming on live today. Today was episode 24, how to honor both
Yep.
faith and family. And so these are also going on all the podcast channels. So within the week or
Yes.
so, it'll go out. So if you like listening while you walk or clean your house or anything else, hopefully you'll tune in and subscribe to one of our channels on Apple or Spotify or Clear Channel, any of the ones. We have it all
Yeah.
on there, so which is great.
That's right.
Awesome, awesome. And again, if you just to make sure this is on for people who are listening only, we're talking to Chris Miller from Thomas Miller Mortuary and Crematory, and the Corona Chapel, located in the heart of Corona. Their phone number is 951-737-3244. And also the Riverside Chapel, which is the Sierra Memorial Chapel. Their phone number is 951-687-0551. And again, you can always go to
Perfect.
thomasmillermortuary.com to find out all the answers to your questions, because we love to be of
Yeah.
service. So awesome.
Perfect.
So that wraps up the show for June. And I hope you have a wonderful summer. We'll be back in July. But
Yep.
until then, we hope you
Yep,
enjoy
before
the
we go,
weather.
I know next Friday is 4th of July, so have everybody have a blessed and safe 4th of July. Eat plenty of hamburgers and hot dogs, but use plenty of sunscreen.
There you go. Yes, and moderation is the key. Oh, and
There we go.
because we send out monthly newsletters with all the community activities going on.
Yes.
So I thought we'd mention a really big community activity that's happening tomorrow. The Taste of Corona is
There we
happening
go.
in Dos Lagos. The chamber is putting on this fabulous event with lots of restaurants and
Yes.
craft beer and all kinds of fun things. And there's mobile um, mixologists, cocktails, and music, and it's
Wonderful.
really fun. So come on to the Dos Lagos. It's just a little fee, but it's super fun. You'll see
Yep.
everybody from Corona there,
Yep.
which is great. So,
Then we have
and Oh,
The USA, it's the USA 4th of July parade for the city of Corona too, down Main Street. It starts at 9 a.m. next Friday morning from
I
Ontario to Olive, and then afterwards they do fireworks in the park at Santana Park. That starts right at 9, around 8:30, 9 o'clock. When the sun goes down, the fireworks go up.
I love it, and they always have entertainment. There's so much
They
fun
do.
at the sound.
The
So
full
it's
day of
2 weekends
festivities.
of Corona fun.
Craziness. Just stick in town. You don't even have to get on the freeway. You have it all here in this little community of Corona, California.
I love it. Seriously, that is like remember back okay, and I know well we have to end the show, but remember back when there was we had the freeway being redone and
Yeah.
they shut the freeway down and said everybody plan a staycation.
Yep.
I think that was so awesome.
It
Everyone
was
just
nice the whole
stayed in
weekend.
Corona.
They stayed in home.
Yeah,
It
and
was, and
kids
it worked out
played in the
nicely.
street.
Yep.
It was great.
Backyard barbecues. It was wonderful. Said hi
Yeah.
to your neighbor.
I know, it's great. So, I think it's awesome. So, let's make sure we go to the Taste of Corona tomorrow and 4th of July next Friday, and,
Yep.
everyone have a blessed, month, and we'll see you back in July. Until then, thanks for joining us on the Dialogues About Death show.
Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.